Peter, when I embarked on this project 8 years ago, and actually in 2005, I've done a fair bit of research. I was looking at the climatic conditions here in Cairns and at Cape York, the Iron Range, and surprisingly it's very, very similar. So that sort of gave me the idea that I could set up the outdoor cages and keep my snakes sort of in as much natural conditions as possible. Because more than anything else, I'm interested in their behaviour, and that allows me to make some interesting observations. So yeah, I go out at night with the torch every now and then and see what's happening, what they're doing. And unlike a lot of people think that green pythons are sort of lazy slugs, they sit there all day, they're boring, they do nothing. Well, you've got to give them some incentive to move around, and they do respond. Okay. You know, environmental enrichment or behavioural enrichment, whatever you want to call it. Something like this.
Yep.
And I change it every fortnight or every month. You know, I go through it and put in different branches, different things. Sometimes I just pick up a plant frond and throw it into the cage, and I can guarantee you the snakes will be all over it that night.
Okay.
And you know, that's my way of looking at things. Active snakes are healthy snakes.
So basically through observation, you're learning more and more about their natural behaviour.
Absolutely.
That's probably one of the most key things to keeping reptiles, I really think.
Yeah, and if I couldn't do that, I probably wouldn't keep snakes. You know, to me, to have something in a plastic box on the newspaper, that just, yeah. I can understand people who do large-scale breeding. That's necessary, obviously, but that's not my priority at all.
For me, seeing your enclosures and the way you've got that naturalistic sort of environment for them is really amazing. And it's not just, you know, you're actually practicing what you preach, not only in your outdoor enclosures but also in your indoor enclosures.
Absolutely, yeah. Those little enclosures I've got in a snake room there, they're designed to, you know, that sort of vertical shape, and gives them plenty of room to exercise. They can go up and down. The thing is, when, you know, arboreal snakes, they do a lot of climbing, and going up, you know, say 10-15 metres into the canopy and back again, and up and down, that takes a lot more energy than travelling along horizontal branch or on the ground. So those snakes are fit. You know, if you see a wild green python, they're thin, they're muscly, they're very fit snakes.
Okay.
And I'm trying to keep my snakes in the same shape.
Well, I can tell you now by looking at your animals, they are in spectacular condition.
Yeah. The other thing is, I'm wondering, you know, we sort of, there's this established pattern that we feed our snakes regularly, once a week or whatever, 5 days. When you think about it, it takes probably 4, 5, 6 days for the snake to digest the food, depending on the size, of course, and conditions. But what it's telling me, you know, if you feed your snakes every Friday, the snake is constantly in a mode of digesting, and they don't move much, do they, when they have a gut full? So
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so I'm sort of changing it a little bit now, and I feed them irregularly. You know, I give them, sometimes I give them more than I normally would, and then I'll just let them go for 2 or 3 weeks. Then I'll give them a little bit, and kind of, you know, I don't know if it's going to make any difference at the end of the day, but I believe that's probably much more like what's happening in a wild.
More naturalistic.
They don't
definitely
get a mouse every Friday.
Oh no, it's such luxury they don't get. We definitely know that.
And of course I prefer to feed them freshly killed stuff if possible. If I have to reach out for frozen stuff, I always, not always, but if it's been in the freezer for a while, I hydrate the rodents before I feed them. So, yeah, when it comes to drinking, you know, again, there's this perception that you have to spray them because they're poor drinkers. They have to lick the droplets of their body. Well, they do it because it's like, you know, served to them on a silver platter. Why should they move down to the water bowl? But they drink normally like any other snake. You know, as long as the water dish is sort of not too low behind, you know, below the lowest branch, they can just go down and drink like any other snake.
I guess
I don't spray my snakes at all.
Okay.
Not even the hedgehogs. I don't have to, you know, I mean, it's probably 80% relative humidity right now. So.
Very spoiled because you're in the right conditions. There's a few, I guess, misconceptions about chondros, and I guess, you know, you breeding so many would be the person to talk to and sort of break down the barriers of those misconceptions.
Yeah, there are a number. Yeah, and one of the things that I'm currently interested in, well, actually I should go back. In 2008 I selected 27 juveniles, and I kept them for 1 year just to see how the ontogenic colour change actually works. What's the timing and the duration, and it was quite interesting because they're very different to the equatorial green pythons, our natives. They usually change colour. I think the average from memory was 9.5 months, give and take, and the duration was average of 4 or 5 days. So it happens very rapidly. Whereas some of the equatorial things, they start changing colour at the age of 3 months, and sometimes it goes on for 2 or even 3 years. So I still don't know what triggers the ontogenic colour change, which is of great interest to me. But it's just, I'm sort of looking at it like, what is the difference between Cape York and New Guinea? And it's the seasonality. We have very pronounced wet and dry seasons, which they don't have there. But I still can't pinpoint, what actually makes it happen. Exactly. The other thing is the vertebral line in our native greens, which is white or sometimes yellowish. It's been well documented that captive bred native green tree pythons have reduced white striping. And nobody knows why. The American people, they found the same thing with the Maruki ones, which look very similar. So this year I'm set up to run a proper experiment. I'm going to set up a treatment and a control, and I'm going to expose them to UV, natural UV, not artificial one. That's been one of the theories, that because of lack of exposure to UV, that white line does not develop properly. I'm skeptical about it, to be honest, but I feel that it needs to be done and set the record once for all.
Well, there's only one way to prove it, isn't there?
One way to prove it, and it's a fairly simple experiment, but I'm just currently talking to my friend who's an environmental physiologist, because I need to find out exactly how much UV is enough, basically, and set up some sort of a regime how to
regulate that. Regulate the exposure.
So that's on the cards this coming season, provided I get enough hatchlings. The bigger the sample, the more robust the test.
Most definitely. I did notice that you had a few of those animals, the adult animals, with that nice, a lot of yellow striping on the back. That really caught my eye. That really stood out.
That particular female is a progeny of one of the old males, and he's got really nice yellow stripe. So that's something that's obviously passed on genetically. But last year I tried a little bit of selective breeding, hoping that I could improve the white stripe, but it didn't happen. So there's something else, and my gut feeling is there's probably something that's happening during the embryonic development. Because when they hatch, when the hatchlings come out, they're still wet, and you can see the white lines. It's very faint, but you can see it clearly all the way along the back. And when they dry out, it kind of disappears after a day or two. So I just wonder whether it's something that's actually preset in the embryo, and that either develops or it doesn't. But whether UV or diet, or there's been all sorts of suggestions made. I don't know. I think we don't know enough about incubation.
I don't think so either. And exactly that. The incubation was what I was going to ask you. Was like, do you think it's something that's happening during, different temperatures during the incubation time? So obviously through the embryonic development, at certain temperatures, like what fluctuations, and basically what temperatures do you incubate your eggs at?
Well, when I started, I was following
results.
Greg Maxfield's method, which was, I can't tell you off the head, but it was kind of like, a little bit up and down through the incubation period. But he was actually measuring the temperature of the eggs, not the inside of the incubator, right? He had his probe right next to the egg, and as you know, when incubation takes place, the eggs actually create heat, they emit heat. So I had good results, but then everybody else switched to a normal sort of set temperature all the way through. So that's what I do now, 31 degrees all the way through from day one to.
And great results?
Because what Greg's been doing is terrific, but it only works if you have one batch in an incubator, right? If you have 3 clutches laid at different times, well, you can't change the temperatures to fit each clutch. So that's why I basically go up with that. Yeah, so we'll see what this season will bring.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
With your consistent temperatures, you've never seen any, like basically because of your large experience working with chondros over the years, or I should say green tree pythons, with your different incubation temperatures that you've used, have you seen an increase of basically later on virility in your adult animals, or?
No, not really. No, everything seems to be random.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
it's
there's no deformities along the way, or
Look,
specific temperature gives you
this
less
is something
results?
that's a touchy point. You know, there are, you know, I had a number of cases where hatchlings come out with deformities, congenital conditions. I'm afraid a lot of people don't like to talk about it. You know, they don't like to sort of say, "Oh, look, I had," you know.
Everyone likes to say it never happens.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always
that's
get
right.
100%,
Yeah, but and then it becomes a game of numbers. You know, if you have one clutch, say 20 eggs,
Yep.
okay, and one of them comes out sort of a bit funny, well, that's 5%. Right?
Yep.
And you think, well, that's acceptable.
Yep.
But you know, when you breed 350 hatchlings, like I had in the past, suddenly the 5% becomes, you know, whatever, 30,
Yeah.
35 individuals. And you think, Christ, you know, he's a bad breeder, this bloke.
Yeah, there's
What's he
something going on.
doing?
Something
Yeah,
going on.
but really, it's a game of numbers.
Yeah.
The more you breed, the more incidents that, you know, things will go wrong.
I think you touched on it very clearly there, that, you know, most breeders don't publicise the fact that, or it's a touchy subject.
And,
yeah.
and unfortunately, we don't share enough information, you know, across
That's
the
true.
board.
And I mean, regardless of what species people are working with, you know,
Yeah.
we've all seen something along the way, and unfortunately some of us aren't willing to show or tell that because we're afraid that might help or hurt
Yeah.
our...
Yeah, which is a shame,
That's
really,
sad,
because
No, definitely.
I don't know, I've always been in favour of sharing, you know, my
Well,
knowledge and
knowledge should be
experience, and
free,
that's
yeah,
it.
that's right.
You know, that's good luck to
Definitely.
everybody else.
Cool.